So let's bring in Hussam Zomlot now. He's head of the Palestinian mission to the UK. Welcome to the program. First and foremost, do you condemn what Hamas did inside Israel to Israeli civilians? There are dead and there are hostages.
First and foremost, the Western media must really abandon this framework that has gotten us to where we are today.
Okay, but I just want to know, do you support the killing of civilians?
Of course not, of course not, of course not.
So do you condemn that?
The loss of civilian life is tragic in all sides. And what is happening is extremely worrying and very tragic. And as we speak, the loss of lives, you've counted 70 Israeli deaths. There is more than 200 Palestinian deaths so far, more than 1,600. Entire residential compounds are being wiped out. This is a war crime committed by Israel. What is more tragic, or equally tragic, is the blindness and the deafness of the world and the international community for so many years, of the warnings we have been saying that this was coming. Israel knew that this was coming their way. We, the National Movement of Palestine, the PLO, have found a different path 30 years ago. We have committed to what the world asks us: recognize Israel, commit to negotiations and non-violence, and to international legitimacy and resolution. Israel was expected to do one thing only: roll back its occupation, stop its colonial settlement expansion. Not one day it did so, killing the prospects of a two-state solution. And the world was expected to do one thing, Christian: uphold international law equally on everybody, on Ukraine, on Palestine. And the world fails to do that.
So Gaza is a tiny place, boss. Gaza is about the same size as South Delhi. Pata hai tumhare ko? It takes maybe 1 hour to drive from one end of Gaza to the other end of Gaza if you do it on a straight road. Okay, 2.5 million people out there. At most, you saw 100 people out on the road celebrating. How many people is that celebrating? The rest were shivering, terrified. I've been to Gaza. I have been to West Bank. They live in a state of terror. The mothers and fathers would be crying and hiding, saying, now we know what is going to happen. We are going to pay the price of what Hamas did for their politicking. But if they come out and say it outside, Hamas will come, rape them, torture them. Whatever they did to the Israeli soldiers, far worse will be done to these people. Where is the average Palestinian going to go?
नमस्ते, स्वागत है आपका इंडिया दिस वीक के एक नए एपिसोड में और मैं हूं आमना बेगम खालिद बेग के साथ.
Hi, this is Khalid Beg. Welcome to yet another episode of India This Week by Amana and Khalid. Today we're joined by Arshia Malik, Abhijit Iyer Mitra, Umar Ghazi, Zahak Tanveer. Thank you everyone for joining us on this very difficult times that we get to see every few years in a conflict which basically everyone in the world has seen, and every time the cycle repeats. As we could see yesterday, absolutely dreadful, shocking scenes came out of Israel where Hamas, conducted a terror attack. You could see Israeli civilians being butchered in daylight, and the worst being women bodies, dead bodies being paraded. And of course, as we've all seen what happens with Israel-Palestine, there are accusations, counter-accusations, victimhood. Other group says no, worse happens with us, and somewhere rationality gets drowned out. We will try our best to mix logic with empathy, and we will try our best to try to see an issue from an objective perspective and taking sentiments, into consideration from both sides. So I want to first speak to you, Arshia, get you into this. Arshia, immediately you could see the polarizing thing. Only few countries like India, UK and others, referred to as Hamas terrorists. Others tried to use terms like militants. Qatar, of course, through their propaganda outlet Al Jazeera, call them fighters and whatever, rebels. So between these two things, for some people it's a terror group, for some it's apparently a resistance group. How do you see both these camps, and what are the motivations when there's these two perspectives that you see?
I see a change this time. They've been more forthright. Starting with my own government, I was not sure what the statement from the official agency would be, but it surprisingly turned out to be they did term it as terrorist act, and that was kind of a surprise. Rest, it's the usual rhetoric that is followed. But this time I've seen even the opposition party in our country, kind of gingerly sidestepping and not exactly terming it. This was bound to happen. For Israel, the narrative which has come out, and it's been decades, it's always been that it's an occupier. Look at the language they're using in Twitter spaces: settler, colonial, settler forces. It's never Israeli forces or the IDF or anything. It's always settler thing. So the settler thing makes it as if, they've taken away land from something. And this was bound to happen. But then surprisingly, new entries, certain countries being very, very clear. So this was usual, but then I do see slightly opening up to the fact that Hamas is a terrorist organization. Yeah.
Right. Amna, you want to go and ask?
So my question is with Abhijit. Abhijit, I would like you to talk about the failure of intelligence here. How did Israel and US basically miss what Hamas was planning? Because this seems like a very big miss, not a small one. And people are even saying कि 50 साल आज से 50 साल पहले इतना कुछ फेलियर हुआ था मोसाद से. And since they have a very good reputation when it comes to the intelligence and जो इनका state का जो reputation है, so how do you see it? Give us some insight.
So, what happened was, see, I'm going to break this into 3 different parts. And there's a reason for that. The first is the failure, the intel failure up to the border fence. Then there was the failure of the border fence and its redundancies. And finally, there was the failure in the response after they breached the border fence. Okay. Now, what happens up to the border fence, up to the breaching of the border fence is, nobody knows what happened. Because see, these were, in the opening barrage, nearly 5,000 rockets were fired in 23 minutes. Now, apparently the Israelis are now saying it's 3,500, and Hamas was saying it was 5,000. So I don't know the number, but that many thousands of rockets being fired in 23 minutes. See, you have to coordinate it. You have to get it all out. It needs to be seen. It needs to be fired. Even before that, the amount of industry you require to build or smuggle in 5,000 rockets is immense. That is several hundreds of tons of metal and things like that, which we still don't know how they managed to get in. And there are many methods. One is signals intelligence, which is listening to them. The second is electronic intelligence, which is hacking their emails and things like that. The third is satellite intelligence, which is surveilling them from above. The fourth is the 3.5 part of satellite intelligence is also, certain kinds of production or certain kinds of chemicals, explosive chemicals and things, leave certain traces which can be done in a spectroscopy scan, which was not picked up on. The fourth is human intelligence, the oldest and best form of intelligence, which is people on the inside telling you what to do. All 4 of them failed. For several thousands of rockets being produced. The second part is, remember, this operation has been carried out by hundreds, if not up to 1,000 people. So 1,000 people were in the loop. And how did your electronic and human intelligence fail? Bhai, jab Osama bin Laden pakda gaya tha, he was very secretive. And maybe 1 or 2 people knew other than his family where he was, which is why it took years and years and years to track him down. Okay. With Saddam Hussein, very few people knew that where he was hiding in that house under the floor. So it took again 2, 3, 4 years to, discover where he was. You are 1,000 people, boss. 1,000 people fundamentally can't keep a secret. How did you ignore all of this crap? Very, very important question to be asked. I don't know what the answer is. Now, as for how they breached the wall, we know exactly how they breached the wall. I've tweeted out some videos. One is of a tank being blown up by one of these Ukraine-style drones. The second is, which is, a normal drone. Like some of you here are photographers, so you'd have used that DJI or Parrot drone, so you know exactly what can happen. The Israelis relied on 3 layers of defenses. The first was unmanned sensors and unmanned weapons. Okay, वो remotely camera के through operate होता है, and you can shoot down people, remote operation. But for that remote operation to happen, you also need to have remote detection. So motion sensors, radars, क्या कहते हैं, thermal imaging and all of that. The problem was they were all on poles looking down. They weren't looking up. So they use these little drones with छोटा bomb. हमारा जो atom bomb मिलता है ना, उससे थोड़ा बड़ा ही होगा when they went and, I mean, you try putting an atom bomb Diwali में, if any of you are feeling like शैतान, you take an atom bomb और वो fan, वो देखो fan उधर है ना, उसके ऊपर जो वो ये part है ना, that cone there, you just drop it there and explode an atom bomb, your fan won't work, because all the ball bearings and things will go. So with modern electronics, it's very easy to do certain things from certain angles. So they've disabled a wide range of sensors and a wide range of guns as well. The guns were taken out with slightly heavier drones with slightly heavier payloads. Now, the immediate response when they see cameras go offline is for an armed patrol, a lightly armored patrol, to come up there with guns and things. They were waiting for it. वो blind spot हो गया, so they didn't know what kind of weapons these guys were waiting for with them. They walked up with those weapons, and these were lightly armored Humvees, which they either shot or did whatever to, or they had gotten through and they hit them from a side that these guys weren't expecting to. Then when the heavier response came, because there is a third redundancy, which is the tank or the armored personnel carrier, by that time they had RPGs and anti-tank missiles and basically drones with much heavier bombs. And remember, all of this was done by drones. The Humvees were taken out with drones, as you've seen, them dropping the bomb on the ambulance. And those Israelis don't even know what's happened to them. They're looking on every side, they're not looking up. Same happened with the tank. The tank didn't realize, and a tank, see, it's very simple. If I show you this, this at this point is say about, say 5 mm. I don't know how thick it is, but it's this thick. Tank का सब armor slope होता है, क्योंकि अगर आप armor slope करते हो, what happens is it suddenly become 25 mm thick with zero increase in weight. But the top of a tank is always vulnerable to attack because the thinnest part of the tank, because tanks are only attacked from the side. So they've used, 2-3 kg bombs to drop from the top, which have destroyed the tank. So this is how the fence and the redundancy mechanisms for that failed. They've planned this. And what happens is it's like a virus and a, not antibody, क्या कहते हैं उसे? Antibiotic. Because what happens is, at some point a mutation happens where it becomes too strong. Like what happened with COVID. The same happens with militaries. If you never fight the same enemy over and over again. You fight an enemy as distant as possible so that they don't learn from your tactics, your weapons, your electronic frequencies and things like that. This was a case of familiarity breeding contempt for the Israelis. And there was a huge secret program to improve Hamas's capabilities, presumably in Qatar. Iran doesn't make sense to me. Qatar is the only one that makes sense to me right now. Qatar, possibly Turkey. And there's a reason for that we'll discuss, because Hezbollah ki bahut, sorry to use the word, but gaand jali padi hui hai abhi. They are, feeling pehle wo big boss the or Hamas chutku junior partner tha. Now Hezbollah is feeling left out ki bhai last time 2006 mein sab hamari badai kar rahe the. Now they are like BCMC, hum to muh dikhane ke nahi layak rahe neighborhood mein kind of attitude they have now. They're crying. They're actually crying in Tehran at the moment. You saw images of celebration, they're crying. The third is the response failure, because they never thought their defenses would be breached in this way. They had never prepared for this kind of a rapid response. They thought, like, in 2006 when Hezbollah came and captured a few people, it would be like that. They never expected an operation of this scale. So I can explain the failure of the
Intel.
barrier. No, not the intent. I can explain the failure of the barrier and its redundancies. I can't explain the failure of the response, and I can't explain the failure of the intent.
Right. Zach, coming to you, you spoke about the fact that this comes close to the fact where Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Israel were looking at a historical peace accord coming into practice, and this is being sabotaged by Hamas under the guidance of Qatar and Iran. If you could give a historical context to this and also the contemporary context to this, why was all this done?
Why was all this done? We need to look at the history of the Saudi-Israeli, talks. If you look back in 2001, King Abdullah presented this Arab Peace Initiative (API) to Israel, and unfortunately, at that time, the same happened. And coincidentally, after 6 months, 9/11 took place, and the whole thing was put under the table. Then, if you look back at the Phase Peace Treaty during the 1980s, King Fahad presented this King Phase Treaty, and even at the time, Hamas was the main hurdle, which caused the sabotage to the peace deal. So now, recently, 1 month ago, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, he told in an interview to the Fox News that we are getting closer to Israel, and possibly we will be signing the peace deal with Israel. So we are getting closer day by day. This was his statement. And, with this, peace talk between Saudi Arabia and Israel, Iran is getting cornered, because with the Saudi-Israeli peace deal, the whole Quds industry, there is a whole industry of Quds, which is happening right now. So the whole Quds industry will be shut down. And this is kind of the wholesale business.
Sorry to interject, Zach. What is the Quds industry? If you could tell that to our viewers.
Quds means the Masjid Al-Aqsa. Al-Quds is the Masjid Al-Aqsa.
Al-Quds. They keep using it as a.
So yeah. So you have a lot of resistant groups. You have a lot of lobbying groups. You have a lot of organizations, factions running under that name called as Quds. So the whole Quds industry will be shut down. For example, you have this wedding industry, right? So if you perform a wedding with only the bridegroom and the bride, so there will be no one, and everyone involved in that industry will go bankrupt. So in the same way, if the peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel happens, then obviously there will be no resistance call or caused by Iran. So there will be nothing that Iran can talk about. At the same time, you have the Hezbollah. The Hezbollah survival is all about Israel's, fighting against Israel. So it's all about fighting against Israel. And at the same time, you see the funds which come all the way from United States, especially the Muslim groups and Muslim organizations, and the organization in the United States called as CARE and ISNA. They fund Hamas in a subtle way. So all these fundings will stop. So the whole industry is related to the Israeli and Palestinian conflict. And obviously, these actors will never allow the peace deal to happen. And at the same time, we have also seen that Saudi Arabia is talking to United States that if they recognize Israel, then United States will be giving them the concessions on the civil nuclear program. So the civil nuclear program will happen, and obviously there will be no justification for the survival of the Ikhwan groups or the Muslim Brotherhood groups and the Iranian groups and the Hezbollah, the Hamas, and you have a lot of groups. There will be no justification and for their existence. So obviously, with this peace deal, the Jews are our enemy. The Jewish people, the hating the Jewish people, and promoting this anti-Semitic propaganda in the Muslim world. There will be no such thing in the Muslim world. And obviously, Muslims will be traveling to Jerusalem. They will be praying in Masjid Al-Aqsa, and the tourists from the Middle East will be flocking to Masjid Al-Aqsa and Jerusalem. So there will be tourism in Jerusalem. So the babysitting attitude of the Hamas and Hezbollah, so this will be obviously shutting down. This will come down. So because of major reasons, every time Saudi Arabia comes to to talk about peace with Israel, Hamas comes into picture and they initiate the war with Israel. So obviously when Israel retaliates, and with the retaliation of Israel, there will be the calls for Islamophobia and the Muslims dying in Palestine and what the Arab countries, especially the whole responsibility comes on Saudi Arabia as the custodian of the two holy mosques. People will be asking them, what are you doing for Palestine? What are you doing for Masjid al-Aqsa? So the Saudi Arabia will be in a state where Saudi Arabia will be caught up between the devil and the deep blue sea. So this is all about embarrassing Saudi Arabia. It's all about hampering the peace deal. It's all about letting the Quds industry alive.
So, Umar, my question is to you that you have seen already the tweet of Sarjul Usmani and Rana Ayyub and how they are kind of justifying Hamas attack on innocent civilians. So when we see this kind of tweet from Indian Muslim intellectuals, the so-called who claim that they are representing entire Indian Muslims as well. So how do you see it? It's very obvious that the other community will be suspicious when they see that these people can even go to the extent where they will even support Hamas, militant or terrorist group, if it seems to them their side. So it's a more kind of religious affiliation, and then they do not even care about the national interest. Because in the end, as an Indian Muslim, we have to think from our national perspective rather than being just in this narrative of Ummah. So how do you see that? Also, the second thing, because these people also claim that we represent all the Muslim, do you think these voices actually are the representative of majority of Muslim?
Of course, it is deeply unfortunate because when you look at the Israel-Palestine conflict, one can take a position based on the military conflict between the two places, right? So one is the military conflict that is taking place between the Israeli military. But at the same time, when a student of geopolitics can say that, whether there should be a two-state solution, and what that two-state solution is going to look like, who will be controlling what territory, how is it going to happen, what it entails. These are academic questions that a student of geopolitics can engage in and try to academically understand the position on the ground. But in situations like these, what we are seeing since yesterday, and I don't know till when it's going to happen, we are seeing a catastrophe and a gross violation of basic human rights on the ground. It is no more just a military conflict between the two militaries. This is no more just a geopolitical strife. We are seeing terrorist attacks on innocent civilians being kidnapped, children being taken hostages, people being executed. Their naked bodies are being paraded like trophies. They are being spit upon, and amid loud jeers of religious slogans. So what kind of image is it going to portray in front of the international community? So whenever you are going to take a position on the geopolitics of Israel-Palestine, before taking that position, you have to first acknowledge that this kind of terrorist attack is reprehensible, is condemnable. From then on, the conversation will go forward, not before that. Unfortunately, the conversation that is happening on the Indian social media is deeply unfortunate because we are seeing that instead of the nuanced take on the situation that is happening, we are seeing comments upon comments of Free Palestine when the people from Palestinian side are engaging in such hostilities towards civilians. So when it comes to your question of people like Rana Ayyub and Sarjil Usmani and these elements, first of all, they do not speak for the larger Muslim community. They are the self-appointed custodians of the rights of Muslims, not only in India, all over the world, which they are not. Thirdly, as an Indian Muslim, as an Indian nationalist, as an Indian national has nothing personal to do with either Israel or Palestine. As an Indian national, we have to look at it from a very pragmatic point of view, what serves the interests of our nation, first and foremost, because that is one identity that we keep above everything else, right? So when we look at this situation, we see that, of course, Israel and Indian relationship goes way long back. We have been allies during COVID. Before that, there has been a lot of give and take that has happened, both in intel, information, and everything. So, and when we see people, elements like these openly not only supporting, but raising slogans in support of these terrorist organizations, then we cannot blame the majority community for looking at us with suspicion, for looking at these elements with suspicion. Because you are living in a country where you have freedom of speech, where you have absolute freedom of thought, you have equal rights as any other citizen, and you are taking all of that for granted. Recently, Gauhar Khan, that actress, she has written something in support of Hamas. Now, she's just an example, not picking on her personally, but it's an example, the kind of lifestyle that she's leading in India. Acting in movies, wearing whatever she wants, right? Being in a relationship, speaking her mind, that kind of, and all the Muslims, all the Indian Muslims who like leading that lifestyle, who are leading that lifestyle, if they were, unfortunately, living in Hamas-controlled Palestine, they would be executed much before they would attack the Israelis. They would not exist. So my position is that if you are talking about human rights, if your position is the so-called human rights of the Palestinian innocent civilians, the first threat to a Palestinian civilian is Hamas. I'll repeat, the first threat to any Palestinian innocent civilian is Hamas. This needs to be very clear for everybody. Also, the next threat is when Hamas attacks like it did yesterday. When Hamas attacks Israel, they know what is going to happen next. Hamas is very much aware that they are no match militarily to Israel and its capabilities. But whenever they attack, then they go to some other places where they hide in their bunkers and everything. And the civilians on the Gaza border, their homes are demolished by the retaliation from Israel. Their innocent civilians are killed, of course, when there is retaliation, which is also reprehensible, condemnable. But at that time, you need to see that they use those images and pictures to get foreign aid from all over the world. They use those pictures, and this has happened at that time because I think they don't like the Sunni Arab and Israeli connection that is building up. So maybe Iran did this to counter that. I don't know. But we need to be very clear that an Indian national would stand against terrorism. If you want to take a position that maybe there should be a two-state solution, that's okay. But the conversation should start by condemning Hamas, and the rest conversation will move forward after that only. So that is my position.
I want to continue on that and pick on that, and I throw this question to Arshia, Zahak, and Abhijit. You guys can come in.
Yeah.
Arshia, what is the charter of Hamas? What is the history? What are their demands?
I don't have it over the top of my head. I think
Sure.
Zahak will be able to do it, but I know it demands the annihilation of Israel. That is the crux of it.
Okay. They're very clear
Exactly.
about it. I mean, the
Very clear
entire
about it.
state. Okay. Zahak, if you could come in.
Yeah, Hamas is actually the militant outfit of Muslim Brotherhood, Ikhwan Muslimin, and it's primarily funded by Iran. And Iranian mullahs, basically, I mean, their ideology is behind the ideological force behind Hamas. So Hamas basically, they want the whole Israel to be wiped off the map. So which is quite what you can say is quite illogical, irrational. So this cannot happen. This cannot happen. How can you wipe off Israel off the map? It's not possible. And when it comes to Palestinian Authority, they work in collaboration with Israel, and they have some reservations, and they have conflict with the Israeli authorities. But at the end, Palestinian authorities, you can say that they are the most closest to the Israeli administration. But when it comes to Hamas, and you also have the PLO. PLO is kind of the hardcore leftist organization, and they work in collaboration with the global left. And the global left usually works as their ideological mouthpiece. So this is how the whole network in Palestine. So to be honest, Palestine and Israel conflict is not black and white. It's not binary. It's not 0 and 1. So the whole Palestine and Israel conflict is very complex, and it goes back to the British mandate of Palestine, and then how the Turks were controlling Palestine, and the Arab Revolution happened. So it has a lot of history behind it. Unfortunately, when UN proposed the plan that it'll gonna take control of the holy places, and it'll gonna be the caretaker of the holy places, Israelis accepted the proposal, but the Palestinians did not accept that proposal, and they wanted to go for the battle. And we have seen what happened after the battle. The 6-day battle took place, and then the first battle took place. The second battle took place. Then eventually Al-Quds, Masjid Al-Aqsa, it went into the Israel's plan. So you can eventually blame the reactionary attitude of the people at our side. I mean, the camp where we try to support as Muslims. We see that there have been a lot of mistakes, a lot of selfishness, and a lot of reactionary attitude which happened at this side. And as Omar Ghazi was talking about the Hamas leadership, the Hamas leadership lives in Qatar. Okay, they are funded by Qatar. They live in huge villas. They have luxury vehicles, SUVs, and they talk about the rights of the Palestinian people. So this is kind of hypocrisy. This is kind of double standards, and the Arab world knows about this. The Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and the Bahrain, they fully understand this phenomena. And for this reason, if you are seen in Saudi Arabia supporting Hamas anywhere on the social media, you will be reported. The Saudis don't tolerate, at any bit, not in the least bit, they tolerate supporting Hamas. So this is the reality. Unfortunately, I see that a lot of comments on social media, especially from the Indian Muslims. I don't blame all the Indian Muslims. I don't blame them for not getting educated, because it was the responsibility of the imams and the maulvis and the maulanas to educate the common youth. So unfortunately, that didn't happen. And Jamaat-e-Islami in India, as well as in Pakistan, Jamaat-e-Islami played a major role in sympathizing or glorifying Hamas. And obviously, the uncles, the youth, they don't understand what is Hamas, what is Hezbollah. All they rely on the narrative pushed by the imams and the so-called intellectuals. They rely on the narrative of the so-called intellectuals, and these so-called intellectuals push this narrative that Hamas is someone who is fighting for the rights of the Palestinians. And you would be surprised that in Hyderabad, in Delhi, I don't know about Mumbai or other places, I've seen in Hyderabad, in Delhi, rallies in support of Hamas. I'm sure that this is not happening now for the past 10 years, but it used to happen. Rallies and protests in support of Hamas, against Israel, burning the flags of Israel inside India. And as Umar Ghazi was talking about this, what Indian Muslims have to do with what's happening there in Palestine. Yes, Saudi Arabia supports Palestine because they have a connection of Arabism. And the UAE supports Palestine because they have the connection of Arabism. But what Indian Muslims have to do with Palestinians? But yes, we say that, yeah, we are the Ummah, we are the major Ummah, we need to support each other. But to be honest, the Islam, which I have studied, it doesn't allow you to support a Muslim just because he's a Muslim. Okay, so this is the mindset which is very common. But I have to also appreciate that a lot of youth in India are also understanding that Hamas is the cause of, is actually the bone of contention. I see a lot of comments where Muslims hold Hamas responsible for initiating the whole crisis and the conflict. But I think this has to go like on a large scale, and people have to understand this.
What's ironical here is that likes of Rana Ayub and Arfa Khanum Sherwani and the complete communist Islamist ecosystem.
Look, I don't think we should give them any importance because they're scum. They're what we call in that ecosystem is what we call in Arabic bayya khanzir imma khanzir. Okay, let's stop talking about them and let's talk about serious things.
Right.
Okay?
No. What I wanted to speak
No,
about is that
when you
they
talk about Rana
convince.
Ayub,
No. I'll just
I
tell
have
you one
something
thing.
to say.
Abhijit, one thing. I
Let
just wanted to
Zahak
complete.
finish. Let Zahak finish. Zahak
I'll
wants
just
to say
complete.
something.
I want to
Let's
say
have
that
it.
that they have convinced their viewers and readers here that Muslims are oppressed. They can openly support Hamas here. Then when they get countered by voices again like us, they call that victimhood. In Saudi, you can't do that, right? So I'm just saying the kind of zombie control that is on the followers there. Zach, you wanted to comment?
No, I was talking about this Rana Ayub and Arfa Khanum. They talk about the women rights, and if something, you remember that a Al Jazeera journalist Shireen was shot dead by Israeli forces. So Rana Ayub and Arfa, and they were all in support of Shireen. But what happened yesterday? A German visitor in Israel, she was shot dead, and her naked body was paraded in front of the cameras, in front of the people. So you see this. Rana, you didn't comment on this. Arfa Khanum didn't comment. Where is this feminism? Where is this female supporting? It's utter hypocrisy.
Abhijit, I wanted to get to you. Sure.
Pucho, because there's a lot of points I want to contextualize that Zahak and Omar and Arshia made. But Pucho.
The question I want you to elaborate more on this because Abhijit, there is a tendency, and you rightly called out people there on Twitter, who think this is some video game happening. These guys have been attacked. Now wait for our retaliation and all, right? Retaliation will happen, as a rational mind will tell you, but you need to have empathy. The fact that innocent Palestinians will get killed. So Abhijit, can you please, someone who's visited this place, tell that extreme section of the society in India, which is the counter version of Rana and Arfa, who then say all Palestinians are Hamas supporters. Please tell them Hamas is different, Palestinians are different, and what is the dynamic of how the average Palestinian looks at Hamas?
Okay, so see, the problem is every society has its khanzirs. There are imma khanzir, bayya khanzir on that side, and there are imma khanzir, bayya khanzir on this side. There's nothing you can do about it. Okay, so this is one problem. I am not going to address the extremists because you can't argue with them. You understand? Right. It's futile arguing with an idiot. Right. So first, let's talk about the situation of the Palestinians. They have cruel, callous leaderships that are extremely corrupt. The West Bank leadership is probably less cruel than Hamas. Hamas, there is absolutely zero scope for any political dissent out there. The first sign of political dissent, they'll label you a Zionist agent. They will torture, kill you, your family, everyone, and screw you over. Okay, it is a total reign of terror out there. Okay, second, what they end up doing is they have serious governance failure issues, because if you refuse to talk to the people that you want independence from, तो भाई independence कैसे लोगे उनसे? You have to talk to the people. India sat down and we had so many draft negotiation committees with the British before we got independence. No, the Amirati Declaration of Independence took a long amount, and the creation of the crucial states and everything took a long time from the British. Let me read out what the Hamas Charter says for you, the operative part, which is very important, why they refuse to talk. The links are distant from one to another in time, and the obstacles placed before the jihad warriors by the followers of Zionism stopped the jihad from continuing. Nevertheless, the Islamic resistance movement, which is what they call themselves, aspires to bring the promise of Allah to pass no matter how long it takes. As the Prophet, peace be upon him, made the day of judgment will not come until Muslims fight the Jews and kill them, and until the Jew hides behind rocks and trees, and then the rocks and trees will say, "O Muslim, O servant of Allah, there is a Jew hiding behind me, come and kill him." This is the charter.
My God.
Okay. Now, every religion There is no religion on earth that does not have violent clauses for the times of war and peaceful clauses for the times of peace. Okay. God gave you free choice so that you choose. You don't say, God told me to kill him. You are an asshole, so you chose something which suits, which justifies your murder, you wanting to murder. Okay, don't blame it on the book. You are the asshole. Okay, number one. Number two, इसमें क्या है with the Hamas? Every time they fall short, they need something big to compensate. We aren't getting rice, we aren't getting electricity, we aren't getting this, we aren't getting that. Oh, let's go kill a few Jews, there'll be retaliation and everybody will reunite in this fight for our national identity. Why is Gaza the way it is today? Is because Hamas refuses to even acknowledge that Israel exists, that they are humans, and to deal with them in any form or way. Except when their VIP children need entry and exit visas and they need to go to hospital. The average Palestinian cannot go outside Gaza hospital, but all the leadership, they go to Tel Aviv hospital and Jerusalem hospital. And it's not because of the Israelis. The Israelis, if you make Israelis were providing help to ISIS wounded fighters on the northern border pass because they believe if somebody is injured, they need help. Okay, but this is what they have done. And why do they do this? Because it is a fantastic way of keeping power. It is all about power. It is the most nasty, cynical exploitation of Palestinians. Now, I want you to notice did you see me tweet out a single video of generally Palestinians celebrating, except those few who came out with corpses? There are 2.5. Gaza is a tiny place, boss. Gaza is about the same size as South Delhi. Pata hai tumhare ko? It takes maybe 1 hour to drive from one end of Gaza to the other end of Gaza if you do it on the straight road. Okay, 2.5 million people out there. At most, you saw 100 people out on the road celebrating. How many people is that celebrating? The rest were shivering, terrified. I've been to Gaza. I have been to West Bank. They live in a state of terror. The mothers and fathers would be crying and hiding, saying, now we know what is going to happen. We are going to pay the price of what Hamas did for their politicking. But if they come out and say it outside, Hamas will come, rape them, torture them. Whatever they did to the Israeli soldiers, far worse will be done with these people. Where is the average Palestinian going to go? Either they will get bombed by Israeli planes, or they will get tortured, raped, and killed by their own government. So, Palestinians require a lot of empathy from us. And, I find it very disturbing when there is a lack of empathy in India for Palestinians. Because, just because you support one side, you should never lose your humanity for the other side. Okay. This is very important. The second is, with relation to what Zahak said, we have to go back, and this is motives. Okay. We have to go back to Ibn Taymiyyah. I used to hate Ibn Taymiyyah for a long time. I am now convinced I was wrong and he was right. I think Arabs living in the Arab world understand the nuance of their religion far better than people who are not trained or brought up in that context. And unfortunately, if you listen to Mazri is very different from, Khaliji Arabic. You understand why the Egyptians and Sayyid Qutb and, sorry to use that word, but assholes like him get it so fantastically wrong. You see what happened with the Saudi states. This is not the first Saudi state. This is the third Saudi state. Okay. Yes. And the third Saudi state also had initially when King As-Saud had he had his own Ikhwan. And when he conquered what is today Saudi Arabia. Those Ikhwan became super fundamentalists. They got drunk on power and then they wanted to attack Iraq and shit like that. And he said, boss, for what? We wanted to bring peace, stability, and order. Here there were disaggregated tribes killing each other. We brought that. Ab bas karo. It isn't, we aren't going on conquest, we are going on pacification. Okay. They rebelled against him and he killed them off. Justifiably so. Because they were lunatics up here. Okay. The second time this crap happened was when King Faisal tried modernizing. He brought in TV and women's schools and things like that. And they went and, there was the siege of Mecca, and they ultimately killed him. They killed him for because of modernizing, giving women an education and bringing television and things like that, which they considered haram. And so, the Saudi leadership has been quite resistant to change, and they warned. At that time, I forget who the king was. Was it Fahd or who it was? He warned the Shah of Iran. Brother, you are going too fast. In those days, people don't realize this, but Iran and Saudi Arabia were like best of friends.
Yes.
Okay. And he warned the Shah of Iran, boss, you're going too fast. We are rural countries. We have seen what happened to King Faisal. Do not do this. You are going very, very fast. Faisal thought he was conservative, and he was too progressive even by those standards, and he got killed by a conservative. Now, what happens out here is that you have, and of course, the Shah paid the price for his overconfidence. The Saudis learned from what happened to Faisal, and finally, you now have a leadership which saw an example of Mohammed bin Zayed and what has been happening in the Emirates. And notice, even there in the Emirates, what has happened is it's differential progress. Dubai and Abu Dhabi are extremely progressive, but Sharjah, which used to be very progressive, has actually gone back to time. Mm-hmm. Okay, I think, I don't know about Ras Al Khaimah and Ajman and all those places. Maybe the others can, maybe Zach can fill us in. But, it's differential. Some go up, some go down. Saudi Arabia is finally at a stage where it's got a king. I think King Salman finally realized, let's give MBS a chance. I think he's on the right path. And I think MBS is doing a fantastic job right now. He's got all the right ideas. There is a danger of very quickly bringing in political freedoms. First, you bring personal freedoms in, you see how the process is calibrated. Have the people earned the right? See, you go to the UAE, you've got every freedom you want. You can even criticize the government in certain ways and things like that. Okay, that is the system ultimately that Saudi Arabia will move till. Jamal Khashoggi, what people don't realize, was a bloody Muslim Brotherhood testicle. He was Sayyid Qutb's left testicle that got lost when the Egyptian government executed.
He was very close to Osama bin Laden and Abdullah Azzam.
He was.
Yeah, he used to.
His entire thing is apologias, right? He probably got money from the bin Laden group itself for several different things. So we need to separate this. Now, the Saudis are now very surely on a path. Ignore the statement. The statement that came out, condemning Israel, this is just verbal whatever. The Israelis are very used to verbal condemnation and private cooperation. The Israeli-Saudi cooperation is this close today. They're almost conjoined at the hips. Okay, so unke beech mein a lot is forgiven. But let's finally come, sorry, I've taken up too much time. I should come to the motive. See, the motive, there is Qatar, there is Iran, and there is Turkey that we need to examine. Iran's problem is it has been upstaged. Its local agent in the area has been upstaged. It does not want to give Hamas any more victories. Optimally, it should have been Hezbollah doing this in the Iranian point of view. But Hezbollah is completely depleted because, when I was in Tehran, opposite Imam Khomeini's grave is the graveyard for those who died in the Iran-Iraq war. All those corpses are being, put below, and the latest tombstones to come over, most of them are thousands upon thousands of Iranians who have died in Syria. Hezbollah has been completely depleted in Syria, right? They can't carry out this attack right now. But, and who were they fighting out there? Let's not forget, they were fighting the same Sunni terrorist organizations, Ikhwan-related or Muslim Brotherhood-related organizations that Hamas is born out of. Hezbollah was literally fighting similar, not the same, but similar ideology to Muslim Brotherhood ideology out there. Okay, and the Saudis realized very early. People don't realize this. In the 70s itself, the Saudis realized how the Muslim Brotherhood, after they got kicked out of Egypt, was abusing the privilege of staying in Saudi Arabia, radicalizing and indoctrinating. Do you know Osama bin Laden himself got radicalized because of that Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood presence that got exiled into Saudi Arabia and abused their exile in Saudi Arabia to radicalize the Saudi population? People don't realize this. So, Iran has the ability, they are extremely sophisticated in their military planning, but there is a fundamental dichotomy. Qatar is the one that has both the sophistication, the money, and the rationale. They hate the Saudis. You know what the Saudis did to them a few years back. And they will not tolerate a peace deal because the moment the peace deal between Israel and Saudi Arabia is signed, that's the end of it. फिर कुछ बचा ही नहीं है, right? So I think they have the greatest. Turkey, people don't realize this, but Turkey's military planning ability, the moment, there was that coup attempt against Erdogan, he has purged his military so comprehensively. Their ability to even plan something like this does not exist. Would I put it past them? No. But do they have the money? Yeah, wo khud bankrupt hai. People are in this country are so obsessed with Pakistan, we don't see how the Turkish economy is doing. There isn't much money going around there either for this kind of thing. So I personally believe it is Qatar. Because that is where both capability, money, and motive come together. The others have capability, but not benefit or motive. Some have motive, but not money, etc., etc.
Amna, your question?
Abhijit, I was trying to understand or trying to listen Palestinian voice as well. So I found this man, Hussam Jamlor, who is a head of Palestinian mission in the UK, former head of PLO mission. And he seems a very sane voice when I was listening to his interview. So he said that we are ready to recognize the Israel as a state and we are ready for the solution. But it's the Israel who is not going back. And जो उनके illegal settlement है उसको वो नहीं हटा रहे हैं तो ये इजराइल की गलती है and also he was advocating कि international community especially international जो judiciary है वो आए वहां पर वो और human right equally हर जगह पर apply करे so that seems like a very feasible kind of suggestion. So I want to listen about these kind of voices. Are they even capable of, or are they representing real Palestinian voices? Is it possible basically अगर Israel आकर के थोड़ा यहाँ पर बात करे तो, or they are just putting forward this idea but practically उनसे हो नहीं पाएगा because Israel की side से ये argument आया कि even these people are alive because हम लोग हमास को कंट्रोल में रखते हैं और हम उनको टैकल डाउन करते हैं. So I just want to understand from your perspective. Also one small question simply, conflict to resolve करना ही पड़ेगा. You can take any side. Not
necessarily.
So how long?
I hate my neighbor. I've hated my neighbor for the last 40 years. There's no reason for me to resolve that conflict. Very frequently, I'll take my gandhi sabzi or jo chicken mutton ka jo bones tha jo sad gaye hain aur jisme they're stinking, I'll throw it across the boundary wall onto my neighbor's house. I don't have to solve it.
Do you think
so,
that
there is
take matlab पूरा रीजन अपने अंडर में ले ले तो मे बी जो पैलेस्टाइनियन है वो भी
sometimes it really helps to managing a conflict is easier when you're not thinking when you're not hell-bent on a solution. Solving a conflict is easier when you accept intractability than when you insist on a solution. That's one of the rules of peace and stability maintenance. So I don't see an end to this conflict. But anyway, but coming to your first question, which I forgot what it was.
About this
Zumlaut. Yeah. Hussam is a very good friend. I won't say very good friend, but we've had several lunches and dinners together in Ramallah. So I'll tell you what, and The Israelis have done a lot of things that are wrong, that are just plain outright wrong. Okay, you just can't go around occupying territory. Samjhe? You can't kick people out of their khandani property and say, "Main idhar ghar banane wala hu." It's just not done. Okay? How is that any different from what, say, all the gundas in Bihar and UP do? Land grabbing and kicking out and doing construction like that. Okay, so when you take this to the Israelis, they say, "Bhai, look, we agree it is wrong, but you tell me, what do we do?" See, their principle is that there are two paths to solving a conflict. One is carrots and one is sticks. Okay. For them, the carrots has always been greater and greater autonomy, ultimately leading up to independence. Okay. The sticks, what sticks can they use? Bombing somebody isn't really a stick because then they die. How do you talk to somebody who's dead? Okay. And the stick is, the longer you delay this, the more land we're going to seize and create realities on the ground. So for you, and this is a huge negotiating problem. And this is why, I started off by saying the Palestinians are cursed with the worst leadership around.
Yeah.
There isn't a single sane Arab country. If you go talk to the Saudis in private, the first time you say Palestinian leadership, even Mahmoud Abbas, they'll say, "Who?" You go talk to the Emiratis, they'll say, "Who?" And these are very civilized people. If you use terms like Bayak or Imma Khanzir in front of them, they'll probably faint right there. And for them to spit, it's a particularly bad gesture. It's like us saying MCBC, whatever, 100 times over. But this is the caliber of leadership, a corrupt, incompetent leadership they're stuck with. They know what the game is. They know the longer and longer and longer. But see, they don't want to bite the bullet. Today, you will get 25% of Palestine. Tomorrow, you will get 24%. Day after tomorrow, you'll get 23%. The day after that will be 22%. They know what is happening. But they still don't want to do it because if they bite it, they have taken their population's expectations so high. They feel they will get lynched, killed, whatever, by their own people. Okay, they can't make difficult decisions. That is their problem. And have you noticed something? It isn't. Zach made the point about the Hamas leadership all living in luxury in Qatar. Do you think the West Bank, the Fatah leadership, is any different? Every time I meet them in Ramallah is at the Movenpick Hotel. Very posh, elegant hotel. 5-star. That is the only place they'll take you. I have to tell them, boss, take me to little holes in the wall where I can eat, where local people eat and things like that. No, Movenpick Hotel. When I go to Rome or Paris or London, I am staying with family or, friends. These guys are staying at the Plaza Athénée, the Roccoforte Hotel, €1,000 a night, possibly in a suite of €15,000 a night. I have never met a Palestinian anywhere except a insanely expensive European 5-star. At least the leadership. Are they any different? And Israel encourages this leadership because they know this is a weak leadership and they can just see. Israel also plays dirty. See, my whole issue is I believe Modi should be criticized, but criticize Modi for things he's done, not for things he's not done. Israel needs to be criticized harshly, but criticize Israel for things it's done, which is callously manipulate things so that the Hamas leadership stays in power or continues to have a stranglehold on the people of Gaza. Or how Mahmoud Abbas and all his rotten, corrupt governments stay in power and continue to have a stranglehold on the people of the West Bank. But here's the thing, we won't talk about it. Instead, we'll talk about things like, Shireen, what Zahak brought up, Shireen getting shot, which we now know she was shot by the Israelis. They've admitted to it pretty much, which is, you know, in combat, boss, these are very difficult gray things to shade. They get you headlines for 2-3 days, they solve nothing. Dealing with Palestinian corruption, on the other hand, is unsexy. It'll never make the headlines, but that is what will get you your solution ultimately. So yeah, Israel does play dirty.